formula together or
Welcome to Diversity Conversations, where we engage in thought-provoking dialogue to identify leadership solutions to today's most challenging conflicts. Streamed live each week, Saturday 9:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. Hosted by Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Strategist and CEOs Eric Ellis and Tommy Lewis. Join us and add your voice to this engaging diversity conversation.
Good morning, Greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, the United States, and the world. My name is Eric Ellis, and I'm the president and CEO of Integrity Development Corporation, and I'm joined this morning by my good friend and brother,
Tommy Lewis, president and CEO of Make It Plain Consulting. Good morning, Eric Ellis. Good morning.
Good morning, Tommy. How you doing, man?
Doing well, Eric.
Good.
Doing well.
Good.
It's good to be here, Eric.
It's good. We had such a time last week.
Yeah.
Amazing conversation. We're going to continue that this week with a part two. But it's always a joy to be able to communicate with my brother, to communicate with you all, the community. If there are questions, comments, thoughts that you have, we're going to invite you to join in this conversation. And we are still looking to really get an audio and potentially a video way of engaging our community. Tommy, how was your week?
Eric, I want to really focus on one day of this week, and that was last Sunday.
Okay.
Last Sunday, I had an opportunity to go golfing with you and our golf club.
Right.
And we're coming out of a kind of the winter season. So
Right.
we don't do a lot of golfing during the winter, and now we're coming into the golf season approaching. I hadn't golfed in some time, and so my body was kind of it was very firm and tight, and which works well for my golf game.
Right.
So I don't get all loose,
Right.
and confident.
Right.
So Eric, I started the round exceptionally well for me.
I was sitting there observing.
Right.
Exactly.
And then I showed up.
That's how golf is.
3 holes in, I'm golfing well. My mind
Even.
is like, I'm even. I'm golfing as if I know how to golf. And then my soul left my body, and I started looking at myself from up high. And
In admiration. I said, this looking pretty good. Uh-oh, you lost your attention. Your attention. You started celebrating. You didn't even say nothing out loud. You just was up.
Hey, Eric, let me tell you what happens. All right, full transparency, Eric. Eric, I had looked at the leaderboard.
And I'm at the
top. Oh, God. I looked at the leaderboard and I was at the top. I was second.
Right.
And I'm playing within myself.
Right.
And
you played that out.
I got outside of myself. And
Oh my
then,
goodness.
as we talk about just going social,
Yeah.
I just started to embrace the lessons of life.
Yeah.
But had a ball.
That's an amazing story.
I needed that humility.
Right.
I needed that spark of success
Right.
and failure in the same day.
Right.
And so there's a saying that I have all the time is, take failure and success in the same vein. I realized or actually experienced the same. So there's one thing to say, God will be with you, or keep your chin up, or there'll be another opportunity. And then there's another thing to actually experience it real time. And for me, I experienced success and failure in the same vein.
Right. And as we do oftentimes, I want to slow that down a little bit and also give a parallel to life. So here's how golf can go, and here's part of how that golf is a game that's dishing out losses on a regular basis. It's really undefeated. Golf is undefeated. And we'll bring all comers. I mean, that's how golf is. Bring all comers. And it usually does quick work up.
Yeah.
What about you done? First 3 holes, you're now crawling out of a grave. And so if the game that you play is like that people aren't often winning, then you come with some discouragement that it's probably going to whoop me again today. And so then all of a sudden, so that's how you come. But then all of a sudden, you are winning. And so Tommy says, I'm out here in this game that's taking nothing but victories and giving out nothing but losses, and I'm winning right now. My name's at the top of the leaderboard, and that's a good thing. But he said sometimes when just a little twinge of pride comes into that, then life will come with another smackdown. That is what life is like for all of us. And I'll tell you, and so when we are winning, to be able to maintain the humility of that and just continue to focus on the grind is the difficult part. It really is. Let me take that to pastors and everything else. Because what I've seen, Tommy, is that too often I've seen pastors that when they started their ministry, it started small. Their heart was toward God. God started blessing them. They started getting more people. And at first, when they were getting the people, they were thrilled about that even then. But then once they started getting on a little run of success going, then they wanted armor bearers and basically servants and everything else. And sometimes when our ego gets outside of us, Tommy, it sets us up for the loss. So I know that as we go through this journey of entrepreneurs, I'm not disappointed at the pace that it takes because life is the journey. And the other thing is that in business, oftentimes the only metric that we really ultimately care about is a financial metric. And I would suggest to you that that's not the greatest metric. The greatest metric is the value of the good that you are doing. And we continue to do that. I'll tell you, part of the inspiration that I get, Tommy, from our work is in being able to impact people and organizations in a positive way.
Yeah. I agree with that, Eric. And I'll just share this, turn it back over to you for your week. And then we have as you mentioned before, we're going to return to the conversation that we had started last week and invite our community to share their thoughts, questions, and insights as well. So I do want to shout out a Ohio-based company, 5 or 6 generation owned. They're about 125-year-old organization. They are in the construction concrete business. Anderson Concrete and Buckeye Ready Mix. For those who are in Ohio, seen their concrete trucks everywhere. This company has really grabbed hold of the tides of change, and they want to be on the positive upward swing of change. And I am working with them, and they have shown me tremendous resiliency against adversity.
Okay.
They have shown me that over 125 years, their company and their business have withstood a real depression.
Right.
Multiple recessions.
Right.
Talent wars.
Right.
And all the above. And now they, as a concrete company, large company, they're really trying to push the envelope into innovation and creativity, beginning with their employees.
Okay.
So we have been working with their employees who, look like construction workers and all that good stuff, and telling them with either a college degree or not, with a large family or not, being from the urban core or rural communities, that your background, experience, and ideas are welcome and needed. And so that's the diversity, equity, and inclusion work that we did. And I want to shout them out because they were so nice about receiving criticism. They welcomed it. They welcomed, and I was on the outside saying, here's just what I see. I'm just going to call it as I see it. They said, please tell us. It's like, well, yes, there's some areas for improvement, and there's a pathway to that improvement. And so those companies, those organizations that serve the community, they're building highways and buildings and communities. Literally, they're building communities. they take great pride in this. And one of their core values is integrity. And they spoke at length about what integrity meant and means to the organization. So just wanted to recognize the company.
Well, I'm so grateful to hear that that there are companies out here that are interested, pen in hand,
Yep,
hearing feedback that I can get better at something. Bravo to that. And let's see what our community is saying to us this morning too. Brooke, so glad to have you joining us this morning. What I've seen is the first moment when the energy shifts from winning to not, it takes me holding myself up so I don't go too far down.
yeah. I agree with that, because one of the sentiments that I was thinking about, and I may have shared on social media, Brooke, is that I took a couple of, or a few, body blows, and one of the body blows from a business perspective put me on the canvas. Right, it just knocked me down a little bit.
Yeah.
And as soon as I hit the canvas, boom, 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 and bounced, my corner crew, friends, family, and staff said, "Hey, time to get up. Get up. Need to bob and weave, right? With the times, need to stick and move." I had got complacent, Eric. Right? I got complacent in my own ego, pride, maybe strength.
Right.
And came in like, and once I thought I was Mike Tyson. I
Right.
was winning.
Right.
And didn't.
1 minute. Boom.
1 minute. I mean, 35, 40 minutes, an hour before the fight is the big party.
Right.
And the fight lasts a minute.
Right.
Just boom, boom, boom. Mike Tyson ended up losing as well. So I think of staying within my craft, within my lane, and the moment when the energy shifts from winning to not winning, it takes Brooke and me and us holding ourselves up so we don't go any further.
So I got a word for you, and I want to share this with you, and I want you to internalize this, grasp this, and implement this. One of the things that I love about me and my brother Tommy is that we are two individual CEOs that run our own businesses, but we are also partners, and we share insights and knowledge. We motivate each other. We share business sometimes. And I'm saying to you that that is the formula to make it, that you cannot make it on your own. You've heard people say that closed mouths do not get fed. What I'm going to say to you is use some wisdom, because not everybody's trying to help. Unfortunately, and Tommy and I were talking about this, the challenge that we face in life is that if you're doing too well, then people don't think you need any more business. If you're not doing very well, then maybe people think, there must be something wrong with you. And so oftentimes, most of us are quietly dying in silence. And I'm going to say to you, do not do that. Call me, call Tommy, whether we actually can help you right away or not. I'm pretty sure that we always can do something to link you to somebody else, because that's the way that we are going to succeed, is that we've got to do it in collaboration. I like this here, collaboration over competition, because it's a big world out there. There's more business out there than either one of us can do. And what I'll say to you is that so many of us have been raised under the mindset of you've got to do it for yourself. And so we end up just digging. And if you're not careful, you will die in silence or on your own. We have got to find ways to partner with each other in this crazy world that we are living in right now. Nothing is making sense.
No.
So do not sit around. Hey, do not sit around and be blaming yourself the whole way.
Come on now.
Like, well, there must be something wrong with me. The world is crazy.
Yeah.
So you better open up your mouth and call some people and keep calling some people. Invest in others and be open to people investing in you. And some of what we're going to have to lose is pride.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, that's a big word, Tommy.
Yeah.
Pride is not one that we all want to run to and say, I'm prideful. Fact of the matter is, in this world, we quietly are getting judged by that. How are things going? And if you can't say, well,
Yep.
And so we're trying to avoid that from others. And so we just fill in the blanks with it's going well, even when we're drowning. And I'm going to tell you, you got to have some folks in your life that you can tell that I'm drowning a little bit.
Eric, our community's up bright-eyed and bushy-tailed this morning. Thank you again, T. Cooley out on the West Coast. John Williams.
Right.
John Williams dialing in. Appreciate you, John. You know, got Brooke and got folks Roger Miller always showing up. Thank you all. I wanted to give a shout out to our community, those who are sharing in the chat and those who are listening either on radio or live stream. That what Eric was just saying about connections, I think I take a lot of pride in connecting people with other people. Right. So just the other day, I was at an event. There was a fairly young photographer. I asked them, is this what you do? They said, yeah, we do photography, we do websites, we do marketing. None of that is what I do.
Right.
But I know other people and companies who need those services.
Right.
It makes sense to me to connect the service need with the service provider.
Right.
And then I get out the way.
Right.
It doesn't hurt me to help.
Right. Say that again.
It doesn't hurt me, pain me, frustrate me, or trigger me to help.
Right.
It's easy. It's just like love, right? It doesn't hurt me to love. So when making the connection, do that. I know for a fact the same thing, Eric, happens with me. People share my name,
right?
The company, you, other folks, like, hey, we have employees in our company,
right?
And we have a need. Call integrity development,
right?
Call Make It Plain, call XYZ. They may help. Sometimes we have the answer. Sometimes we have to refer and defer.
Right. Success is not about the outcome. Success is about what you get out of the experience. I like that. And I would say to you that that's what I've said to my kids now. As my children have grown older, I continue to say to them, success is not defined by material things, because we're all living in a materialistic world. And whether we buy that or not from a value system, I would say that that is the world that we live in, and those are the pressures that we're under. And so people are constantly, what are your children doing? How are they doing? And they're asking that question. They don't mean to, I don't think, a lot of times, but they're really determining how successful you are by what your children are doing, what you're doing, where you're living, what you're driving. And so I've told my kids now, I said, success is not about a job. It's not about a degree. It's not about a house, not about a salary, any of that. Success is defined by the quality. And Dan Hoffheimer, I know you're going to be able to relate to this. It's defined by the quality of each moment lived. So live. Dan is one of my good friends. I love him. And the things that he's gone through have allowed all of us to recognize how precious life is. And so that's the first thing I think that we need to do.
Yeah, Eric. I was just sitting here real quick, Eric, and I had zoned out a little bit just for a minute. Full transparency.
Right.
Eric, why do people listen to us on Saturday mornings?
Like, what are y'all doing here? What are y'all doing here? It's Saturday morning.
Really? I mean, the chat, the community, they're going on fire. And I'm thinking like, what? Why? Ooh, what is it that will have anyone chime in and listen to us talking to one another, to each other, those in the community? Right? I don't understand how God works.
That's right. And I said a term this week and somebody took exception to it. And then I almost by reflex, I barked at. I mentioned the term imposter syndrome. And I said that too often women will speak about feeling this sort of imposter syndrome. And for a long time, I didn't even know what the definition was. But then I learned that it was where you're in a job or a position or doing something that you don't think that you're qualified to do. And so you feel as though you're an imposter in it. And what I've seen from a diversity standpoint is if men are 60% qualified for a job, they'll say, hey, I'm your guy. I can do that. I light it up. Women have to be 95%, almost 100% qualified or overqualified before they'll ever say that. But I would say that men experience that as well. And that's a part of what you're saying here.
Yeah.
Tommy and I just decided 6 years ago that we were going to do this podcast. And we actually didn't care if we were just doing it and just me and him having a good conversation. And for a long time, it was there. That's how we were doing. But what happens is that in this crazy world, you're seeing other people that are doing things out there, and you're just not sure if you could be doing that at that level. And you don't even. Here's the other thing. I'll say this to all of you that are listening and that are watching. That the world sometimes beats us down so much that you're not even sure who you are or what you have to offer. And in business, it's a roller coaster. You're fighting for your life. And right now we're in an industry where you are fighting for your life. It's not that you're not doing good work. It's not that there's not a great need. It's just that the world has gone crazy. And so you cannot define yourself by that. But what I would say to you, this happened to me this week, Tommy, and it's happening to us right now with you all chiming in. We're loving your chiming in. I was in doing training with a couple of my clients this week, 4C for children. I did a number of sessions with them this week. And the sessions were so powerful and the people were so inspired to be engaged that I sat back and I said, almost like God on the seventh day when he said, this is good. Mm-hmm. I got a chance to say that in the midst of all the turmoil about DEI and DEIB, that this is good because the people are talking to each other. They're crying, they're laughing. Again, you almost feel that imposter syndrome, and then all of a sudden the people start responding. We're so grateful that you all have chosen to get up this morning and join us. I did some focus groups this last week. I did 2 focus groups with all white males. And the second one I wasn't supposed to do, my brother was, but I saw that they were like all white males. I said, no, give me that one. Because I wanted to hear from them. I wanted to hear their voices. And I wanted to tell them what the true definition of DEIB is and that it includes them. And at the end of our conversation, several of them just came over to me and shook my hand and said, Eric, man, I'm so glad I was here because we're hearing so much in the media that as our company begins to invest more heavily in this, we're starting to feel like it might be against us. Yeah. And so, but I'm just grateful that all we can do is our best and recognize that success is defined by the quality of each moment lived. Let's look what Dan has said to us, Tom.
Dan says, the world has always been crazy. The media through which we're aware of is the crazy is now 24/7, 365, right? But we have better tools to deal with it. I like that. If we know how to use them than ever before. Right. It's all, I like that. It's always been crazy.
Right.
Now we just have, it's spot lit, right? It is risen up. It's surfaced the continuous craziness.
Right.
I would also say that just like there's always been crazy, there's always been calm.
Right.
This world and us, we've always had a balance. Sure, we've had pendulum swings, right? Of crazy, high crazy, and then calm, and then in the middle. But what Dan is saying, we have better tools. We have better technical tools, Eric. We have better psychological tools, right? Through our awareness. So when we as human beings are feeling psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, even physically hampered and bound, we can tap into the tools and the people that will provide us the help that we need. See, in the past, we may have sometimes self-medicated, we may have kind of covered it up and held on to certain things for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, pass it down to our children and other family members. And they absorb it as a norm, right? I should feel upset, depressed. I should be angry going into work because what happened to XYZ years ago. The world has always been crazy. The tools today is we have to use the right tool in the right circumstance. You cannot always use a hammer to loosen the screw.
Right, right. And Dan, I'll say to you that I've been thinking about you a lot lately. We certainly need your help and the help of others to, in many ways, even save our industry. I would say to you that DEI, DEIB cannot continuously take this pummeling, this sort of strategic misinformation campaign that's going on. If we just simply sit back with our arms folded and believe that right will prevail, I think that we're fooling ourselves. We've got to find ways to tie ourselves together and say, who do we know that we can influence, that this is still the work that needs to be done today. I've also thought about you, Dan, because of what's happening in the Middle East with Israel and Hamas and the Palestinians there. And my view is that I'm supportive of the innocent on both sides. And I know that the Jewish community right now is being vilified in many ways. People have forgotten what happened on October 7th. But you're such a thought leader that I'm so interested in your perspective around where is hope in this place that we're at right now. I heard a Jewish woman talk about her mother. You may have seen her on CNN when her mother was released as a hostage, and her mother had shook the hand of one of the Hamas sort of terrorists, and got a lot of criticism. And my heart was broken because I could see my own grandmother who, in the face of her captors might still be praying for them or seeing them as her own children. Dan, my heart is with you. My prayers are with you. I'm interested in your thoughts around the Middle East, and are there some solutions? But more importantly, how do we make sure that we're supportive in this country? Because it seems like there's so much energy that is given to the negative that solutions and the positives almost don't have a prayer time.
Yeah, Eric. So I'm listening to you, and then Dr. Wright, he jumped ahead of my thought, man. I was just a click too late. Eric.
Ooh, love what Mark is doing.
So we have, in the past, we've had advocates, champions, those who have been very vocal about their support of diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, accessibility.
Right.
So I wanted to call out those words because sometimes we can misconstrue just DEI, DEIB.
That's right.
Want to call it out.
Right.
So we've had those champions. And my question to you, Eric, is as you were speaking about Israel, right? Our Jewish brothers, Palestinian brothers, etc. When we are as humanity or whomever, when we are encountering such visceral pushback and rejection of the concept of diversity, equity, and inclusion, what happens to the champions of old or yesterday who's now silent? So from the corporate champions to the community champions, to the spiritual champions, right? To the humanitarian champions, what happens to them when, we were grandstanding, we're in support 5, 10, 15 years ago. Now there's an attack and it's crickets.
Right. Right. So John Pepper and Dan, I'll probably send you a copy of this. I just spoke to him this last week. He sent me an article he wrote in 2020, The Fragility of Racial Equality, what it entails and what it demands of us and me at this moment. And in this article that he wrote, he talked a lot about people simply being tired, and that when they get tired, whatever progress we've made sort of starts to recoil. As we look at, I've been saying this is an oversimplification, but what I've been saying is that it took us 65 years to get here from the 60s, and literally months to dismantle. I mean, it's coming down quickly, and it shows you the power of the dominant culture. If the dominant culture is really on board, things can, if they understand it, if they're really working to move things aggressively forward, then it makes progress. But if they are against it, it also can regress, create regression quickly. And I think that there are so many people that are benefiting from a horror movie that, and so it's our politicians and our media. Those are the people that are looking for attention in order to gain, profit, resources, political power. So politicians are looking to gain political power, attention. The way you best get attention is through negativity. The media, even CNN, almost especially CNN, they spend more time showing us what the foolish things that people say. I've said this myself, is that I believe that CNN is probably voting for Donald Trump secretly because they love it when he's out there. I mean, during all the years that he wasn't president, they enjoyed it. They missed him for a while, then they brought his name back up because it gets people's eyes and energy, and it gets our heart rate moving. To some extent, we've got to divest ourselves of these emotional highs, and we've got to recommit ourselves to doing the right thing in the face of difficulty. I said to John Pepper that in many ways, people's voices are stripped from them right now. The independent voices of Republicans within the Republican Party, it's stripped. They no longer have the freedom to say anything that would disagree with Donald Trump. And so if they say anything, it's going to cost them. They'll get primaried, or he'll go against them and the base will go against them. That same thing is happening in our country, that DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, is getting pummeled, but people are now afraid to speak up. And the first time I heard that was when I heard from a college professor that's doing some work with us, that the professors are no longer able to teach freely because of some of the state laws that have been changed. They're putting a lot of pressure on educators that if they're saying things in the space of diversity and a student has a problem with that they could be sued, that they could lose their tenure, that they could lose their professor standing. I mean, what are we doing?
Yeah.
What world are we living in that is acceptable, that people can literally, take away our freedom, ban books and things like that? As I thought about, I saw in Good Morning America where they were talking about this movie that's coming out, the Harlem Hellfighters. Mm-hmm. These were a group of African-American pilots in World War I that Hitler himself called the most vicious fighters that he had ever seen in any place in the world. And we don't know about them.
Yeah.
I mean, how could we not know about them? And then in Florida, DeSantis has taken Black studies and African-American history out of anything that's the state is funding. I mean, what are we doing? Mm-hmm. And so I would say that we have to wake up. We can't get tired now. Right. But here's what I was saying about the movie, with this movie that's out right now on Dr. Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. It shows their lives, the parallels of their lives. But what we see is that the reason why they could speak freely and frankly is that they were not depending, their livelihoods were not depending on salaries from the dominant culture. They had their own money. Yeah. And so I think that if we are wanting freedom of speech to exist, then we've got to also focus on wealth creation so that people have enough means of survival and sustenance that they then can use their voice to say things. Because right now, but the other thing I'm going to say to you is this, that I'd also say, Tommy, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, that corporations who are by nature opposed to taking risk, I think that day is over.
Yeah.
I think you're going to have to actually identify your values, and you're going to have to stand next to them, even if they are going to cost you something. You're no longer going to be able to just simply straddle the fence. That's why you're hearing me vocalize the name of former President Donald Trump. I'm not attacking all Republicans. I actually see them as being hostages, many of them, but many of them are on board with that. But the same kind of problems of people not wanting their voters to be nuanced thinkers, the Democratic Party is the same way. They have no interest in us being independent thinkers.
So, Eric, you took us through a number of different dimensions of DEI, the pushback, or even the denial of the existence of diversity, uniqueness of people, equity, treating people fairly, and sometimes politics is about power.
Right.
So it's not always about equity or equality, it's about power and control. And then inclusion is great until I have a sense of loss for practicing inclusion.
Right.
Right. And in some cases, people think that.
Right.
So if I include you, then I have to give you some. In other words, I will lose something. Right. And so some of these decisions and interactions that we make is informed by bias. So it could be personal bias,
right,
or a preference.
Right.
You know, I don't like you because of your mindset. I don't like you because of your political views. I don't like you because of your sexual orientation, the side of the railroad tracks that you live in. And so that's one thing. And everyone has that bias, Eric. Then, as you were talking about from a political perspective, from a national and global perspective, systemic and institutional bias. So when you have people or organizations in power, the dominant culture, who can influence legally,
right,
the right to access education or the type of education or not.
Right.
That is, it can be, that's institutional.
Right.
We can institutionalize the oppression of one's access.
Right.
Over time, it could be a short period of time or a longer period of time, that institutional bias becomes systemic.
Right.
It's the norm.
Right.
Particularly when the collective memory of the group does not remember anything differently. So when you are, growing up in America, for example, and you grew up, say, in the 50s or 60s or 70s, maybe even 80s, and you reflect back now with your friends or colleagues, et cetera, and you talk about the things that you learned about African-American history when you were in high school, and you scratch your head like Dr. King, Rosa Parks, wow, that's about it. At that point, you know that there's more history.
Right.
But you were only provided access to a small piece. If that piece is taken away, you have no recollection that it existed or that it's real.
Right.
And so although you sit in your organization or in your company, in your community, and you're a champion for diversity, equity, and inclusion, if it's not made real and proximate to you, and when someone begins to maybe take it away or tell you it's no longer what you think it was, there's some, I want to say it, I gotta say it, we develop some schizophrenia, some paranoia, right? I'm talking about collectively.
Right. No doubt about it.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
And,
no doubt about it.
And it's real.
Right.
And so I would say, in closing with this, that as we're talking about this from a maybe philosophical, practical approach, mental health, when we're talking about The world has gone
Whoa.
crazy.
Oh,
We're talking about the mentality and the healthiness of the way we as people think. It begins with us individually.
right.
We have to take care of our own mental health first. So when that lie, half truth, or even that kind of gaslighting happens,
Right.
we're not saying,
Gaslight.
we're not saying, you know, wait a minute, did it actually happen?
Right.
Right? There's
Right.
comments, Eric, that, you know, this country has never been racist.
Right.
If you believe it,
Right.
then you say anything that we look at is in history, going all the way back to why folks from Europe came here,
Right.
and fought,
Right.
right, and
Right.
then ultimately tried to eliminate the indigenous peoples that were already here. To say none of that and any of that afterwards happened is crazy.
Right. So let me now tell you why, in part, you're going to see time on us ramp up just a little bit more. I would say to you that there's not a lot of benefits you actually get for being a good, and I won't finish the term.
Yes.
A good N-word. That that actually you must stand, and I'm going to give you an out, strategically and wisely next to your values. Here is the hope of the future. Keep poking the bear. Don't keep poking the bear. Because what happens is that when you do overreaches, whether they're racist overreaches, sexist overreaches, whether they're national overreaches like what Russia did when it went into Ukraine. They thought they would go in there and make quick work of it. 2 weeks. Now here you are 3 years later, you're in the fight of your life. These people are not going to stop fighting till the last person dies. In this country, in many ways, we've been lulled to sleep. But we saw in 2020, when they put the foot on the neck of George Floyd, it set off something globally. And so I'm saying to you that the hope for this country is that if you keep poking the bear with injustice, that you will wake up a sleeping giant of consciousness. That was done when the Supreme Court, the same Supreme Court that said that they can't come up with any more laws around guns because guns are too complex. That's what they said.
Yeah.
We can't outlaw AK 47s, 27s because they're too complex. The weapons are automatic. Weapons are too complex. But then the same Supreme Court is not going to see the complexity of the women's reproductive health care. And you're going to say somehow that you can just say, take away your freedoms and nuances of freedoms. We use the word abortion, pro or against abortion, but that ain't really what we end up talking about.
No.
We're into the nuances of women's health care choices, even around the life of the mother. And how is a politician in Washington, in these state houses, going to make those choices? But guess what? Overreach. When you're doing overreach, almost in every election, in every state, that abortion and women's reproductive health care was on the ballot, conservatives that were all men sitting back trying to determine what should happen with women's bodies are losing them. And that's the hope of us in this country, that all of these crazy things, many of the most narrow thinkers in our country, this is actually what's happening. We're getting smaller and smaller and smaller. But I would say to you that I started with the reason, in part, why Tommy and my energy is ramping up, because we're also seeing some of the things that are happening to our children.
Yes.
And it's so painful for me. Terry, thank you for jumping in. Ken Wilson, love you, my brother. He's got brilliant children that are doing fantastic things. But your brilliance is not going to literally protect you or eliminate your experiences with racism and sexism and classism and all of those things that are a part of our a part of the world that we live in. But as I watch my daughter, I just can't even believe it. My wife and my daughter my wife and I are just crazy thinking about some of the things that are happening to our children, and it's causing us, it's breathing new life back into us, and it's really sidelining some of that exhaustion to still be in the fight. Here's the final word I'm going to say, Tommy, and I'm going to turn it back to you. Here is what I know. That love is more powerful than hate. So I refuse to believe that hate mongers, no matter what their strategy is, will win. And I'm going to tell you all that what saddens me is to see where Joe Biden is right now. He is old, he's tired, he's slowed down. He still may squeak the thing out, but if he doesn't, we're still all right. Because if Donald Trump gets back in, it's going to become more evident that what he's talking about and what he's pandering is not in the best interest of this country. Unfortunately, tribalism and a good con man can really make it difficult for people to see his strategy. So you can't hate the people that follow him because of their ignorance. You actually have to love them out from under it and educate them.
So, Eric, I'm going to ask you this question, and I'm going to ask the community this question. And this is personal, where my spirit and my mind went. So we talk about, in some cases, politics, big corporations, other countries. In reality, for me, I'm not physically or directly involved in any of it, right? For real. So I'm not running for the president of the United States.
Right.
I'm not in politics. I'm not in the military fighting on another land. I'm not in any of that, but I have my own personal life.
Right.
So my question is, how can we make this personal? Again, the question was around being a champion, standing up, right? Representing, as you know, Ken talked about his own son.
Yep.
You talk about your daughter.
Right.
We have a lot of community members who have personal and direct experience with mess, right? So my question is, not the 36,000 foot level. Let's get to the ground and say, what can I do? How can I stand up and speak up for myself and my immediate family and friends?
Right. So here's the short answer. The short answer is don't take the bait. Don't take the bait. In other words, don't even allow yourself to hate those who may ignorantly despise you. People who are being deceived, don't let those deceived people be your enemy.
Yeah.
Understand that there is an agenda at hand, and don't fall into that. Why? Because love is more powerful than hate. And so the reason why I ran to the group of all white males from the union, I wanted to talk to them because I know that many of them have been misinformed about this thing that we are doing. I gave them all my email and my cell number. I said, you call me if you need a greater understanding. I will fight for you as well. And they were like, what? And I could see that they were, before we trained their entire workforce, many of the supervisors were cussing out many of the employees were cussing out their supervisor. I don't want to go to this. This is going to be critical race theory. Just whatever they heard on TV, they thought that's what we were going to be. Oh my goodness. And there's a black facilitator. Oh, the average evaluation score was a 4.7 on a 5-point scale. Many people coming up to us after the training, shaking our hands, hugging us, going back and apologizing to their bosses. I'm telling you, do not let deceivers own their people. That love and truth can overcome, and a tenacity and courage and resilience and fighting back. All of those are going to have to be in our tool bag as strategies that we utilize to courageously stand up. I'm very clear that from this day to the day that I draw my last breath, why God has put me, Tommy, you on this earth. It is really to reconcile people, impart one to another. And from my perspective, to ultimately reconcile people to God. And so whenever I get discouraged, I get encouraged by the power of truth and integrity to make a difference in this world around us.
Eric, I'm learning and moving in so many different places this morning. Our conversations sometimes scripted, sometimes they're not scripted, but for me, selfishly, it's always helpful in one way, shape, or form. I have to shout out another person. I have a executive coaching partner. His name is Maurice. I've been working with Maurice for about 2 years. He's leading diversity, equity, and inclusion in his respective organization.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I had been working with the organization, and I suggested to them 4 years ago that they need an individual person to lead the work.
Mm-hmm.
From that recommendations and through the company's due diligence, they made a decision to hire and bring on board someone to lead the work. And that person was an internal hire. It was Maurice. So every 2 or 3 weeks for the last 2 years, I worked with Maurice and had a conversation with him yesterday. And this brother, he is heaven sent to me. He's always given me acknowledgement, whatever, I'm his coach and all that good stuff. But he starts, how's it going, Tommy? Big Tom, right? He's Jamaican, right, by way of New York City. And I was like, nothing much, Mo. Things are good. And he stopped talking. Things are good.
Right.
He saw through the words. Things are not bad, but he paused and I saw him rock back in the seat. If you're comfortable, talk to me, right? I'm his coach, right? You talk to me because I'm perfect and nothing ever happens to me. He said, now, I just said that in my mind.
Right.
But he says, I don't care about that. I'm dealing with another human being. Sit back. He began in 15 minutes to walk me through what I was experiencing. Eric, he's a social worker.
Right.
He's a mental health therapist.
Right.
He is now in DE&I, and he did to me what he is, not what he does. And so when he walked me through this, he took me from the 36,000 foot, brought me to the ground, put me on the runway, and got me going to take back off. I wanted to shout him out because as you were talking, and I'm looking at the community, I have so much respect and love for you, Eric, so much for the community that they have their own footprints in their communities.
That's right.
No matter where you are, community. And I would like to say, shout out those folks. We have to spread love by saying thank you, by being selfless in saying thank you, by those who we know and don't know. Because if this world is crazy, I want sanity to prevail.
Right. And so let's jump on a couple of things that the community is saying. So Kendall, thank you. He said Mark Cuban is a vocal advocate of DEI. It is what I said when affirmative action got turned over. I was saying to my wife, man, we're going to need the dominant culture, white males and others to stand up and begin to, as allies, admit how systemic racism, sexism is occurring.
Yep.
Don't ask me. I'm not on that side. We're marginalized. If you're on the other side, then you should know. And so Mark Cuban is standing up and putting pressure on organizations that do business with him. If you oppose DEI, then you're going to have a problem with me. I love that. I was in one of my clients. The president of the union stood up the same way. A guy that used to be very opposed to diversity. Now that he understands what it is, he said in a leadership meeting with all the company CEO and everybody, if we're not willing to acknowledge the reality of sexism in this company, then we're not having a serious conversation. Then he named off 5 ways in which women are facing sexism within the company. So I think that that's a powerful thing that's needed. And there are some people that are standing up. Let's look at what Ken has said here. This is rather significant. He said the depth and sophistication of centuries of white supremacy and dehumanizing Black people, I don't think will ever be unpacked, because as soon as you put it in writing, I mean, as soon as it hits the airways like this, people can get offended. Because what Tom and I know is that the number one diversity issue in the world is the one that affects you. And so most people, when you start talking about one area, if that's not their area, then they can get offended. But if we're not willing to deal with some of these realities, it's almost surprising and shocking that people could see us as anything but criminals and killers if you've had decades and decades of negative media news every single evening that paints us in a certain way. It shouldn't be surprising that you have no idea who you are and everybody else sees you in a negative light. But the reason why I'm gonna talk for myself. The reason why I don't deal directly on racism within most of the training that we do is because you would lose the audience and you would give Black people nothing to do but to show up in every one of those conversations as the victim, and white people then show up as the perpetrators. And so we never really make any progress. What I have found is that I need to be doing work on me too. And that as I begin to own my own sexism, my own classism, my own heterosexism, it gives me empathy for others and some of their biases against me. And it also serves to ensure that I don't wake up every day as a victim and depressed every single day. Because if I only dealt with just racism as the only evil in the world, then I can only be depressed. But as I begin to own my own work, it empowers me to know that bias is a human condition. It boils down to who has the power. Now, my biases may not always have the power to negatively affect other people's lives, but it does give me something to do. And I also recognize that it will take Almighty God and not simply me to bring about all the changes in the world that are necessary. And here's the last thing I would say. Again, that love is more powerful than hate. I believe that every single day. It is transformative when I'm standing there naked with no weapon but my mind and my heart and my love. I know that I'm more powerful than anybody that shows up to that battle with hate in tow.
Yeah, so sometimes we have to remind ourselves, Eric, and we have to repeat the mantra because we can get lost in the negativity, and we begin to believe that the negativity is the way.
Right.
That the negativity is the truth. But it's not.
Right. Exactly.
If you are in the center of the storm,
come on now.
Right. And you're constantly in the center, you may not know that there is daylight.
There's daylight.
Peace and calm outside of the storm.
That's right.
You're just always turbulent.
That's right.
Turbulence.
That's right.
Until you cut through.
Right.
If you've ever taken a flight, Eric, and you've had the opportunity to take off from your departure location, and there's some storm, right? No matter where you are in the world, this happens. There's a storm, snowstorm, sleet storm, rainstorm, some winding, it's the wind, etc. And you take off, there's turbulence.
Right.
No matter where you are on this earth in modern technology with flights, when you take off, there's a time that you will get above the clouds.
Come on, man. Come on.
It's remarkable that the gray, the storm, and you get there, it's like, oh, the sun is shining.
Right.
The sun is still there.
The sun is still there.
You get above the fray.
Right.
That's what love does.
Right.
Love will allow you to take flight above the fray.
Right. Come on now.
Right. Every now and again, we dip down into it.
Right.
Right.
And then he's back again. Turbulence, man.
Seatbelt.
You're swinging.
And you hold on to each other.
Right.
I'm scared.
Right.
I'm anxious. Right. And then
Right.
But the pilot,
Right.
but the pilot
He preaching this morning,
has
y'all.
control.
Right. That's
Right.
right.
So we're grabbing each other
That's right.
back in main
That's
cabin.
right.
Right.
That's
And
right.
the pilot has control.
Right. It's not that you do not recognize that turbulence is occurring, but your confidence is in the one who created the world. As Tommy and I came in today, what we said, and this is really what's fueling this, what we said is that if you're not careful, the pain, the depth, the hurt of negative energy can consume you and literally defeat you. I would say in the world that we're living in right now, there's so much negativity in the atmosphere that it feels crushing on your body. You literally can tangibly feel the effects of bias, of hatred, of negative news. You can feel those on the economy, on lost business. You can feel those. And the mistake that you would make is to foolishly believe that you can handle that all by yourself with the tools that you have alone. There's only one tool that you have that can overpower all of that, and that's love. Love is not weak. Love is strong. As I begin to think on love, it literally shifts where my brain can go to access solutions. As I begin to think about the perspective of what would Jesus do, what would God do, as I begin to think in that mindset, it allows me to go in my brain to the creative places in my brain, to the innovative spots in my brain that will happen as we begin to think of perspectives outside of our own. And so we're not offering you a weak solution. We are offering the one that is the strongest. And I would say to you that in the right places, Ken Wilson, he's a master of this, and he does this well. And this is what we do. In the right places with the right group, we absolutely have to fight racism tactically, strategically, informationally. We have to attack sexism and classism tactically, strategically, specifically. But in the global world, you actually just have to attack the spirit of hate and deception that is costing all of us.
Eric, once again.
Oh my goodness. I can't believe that, Tommy. What happened? Y'all showed up. That's what happened. Y'all showed up. Y'all came to the podcast. Me and Tommy used to be by ourselves. We was quiet and we get the show done and quick. We wrap it up quick.
But now we got folks chit-chatting, joining.
Yeah, saying smart things and stuff, man.
Having a conversation.
Right.
So I want to share this before we dismount. Two things. One, love the conversation. Thank you, community, for joining us, right? I would like to invite everyone in our community, if you and your family are moviegoers, to go see the movie Origin.
I'm going. I tried to go with somebody, but Judy cut me off. She said, no, you're not going without me. So we might be going tonight.
And I think we should have a show to talk about it.
Right.
It is amazing. Personally, there's a segment in the movie, Eric, that is my life. Something that happened to me. Directly is in the movie.
Yep.
That's one. The other is there's a lot of projects that we're working on, that you're working on. I would like to invite the community, if there are projects, initiatives, things that you're doing in your respective communities, put them in the chat, send us a link, website, all that good stuff. We're working on a survey here in Cincinnati, greater Cincinnati, that we would like to have more traffic and get some more input from. We'll talk about that another time, send some things out, but we want to spread the good gospel. We want to spread the love and the opportunities. So I think from my perspective, thank you all for staying with us a few moments afterwards, but I did want to share that to invite folks out from a community perspective to have kind of a community type of event over a movie, and then share what you're doing already. Share the best practices so we can maybe replicate them.
Right.
We don't have to reinvent the wheel,
That's
Eric.
right.
And we don't have to, sorry to cut you off, Eric. And community, we don't have to hold each other back.
That's right.
We don't have to hold each other down.
Right.
Eric and I are that example, right? We come together. We are competitors on paper.
On paper.
That's it.
That's it.
Obviously, over the last 6 years, you all have known that they are far from competitors.
Right.
No, there's too much work for so few people.
Right.
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 So we invite folks to partner.
Right. And I'm going to say this on our way to close is that Tommy and I, when we started, we never thought, we never imagined that we would be here this many years. 6 years later, here we are together. And I'd say this to you as well, that we have thought on several occasions, we're going to tighten this whole thing up. We're going to do a different format. We're going to make this more corporate. We're going to hit more data and statistics and all like that. But God seems to arrest us every time we try to crank up our own humanistic business mindset and reminds us that God needs space to work. And that's what this show ultimately is about, is giving God space. When you speak, we are listening. Tommy and I are inspired. We are moved. We are excited. We are compelled by your presence. And here's what I want to say to you, that nobody can stop us if we decide to come together, to care about each other, to create our own wealth and power so that we can invest in the things that we think have the greatest value. You've got to use every talent, skill, ability, and gift that God has given you to try to come together and make the world a better place. If you don't want to see the negative and hate win over the positive, then you got to invest in that. And so I'm just grateful that I'm here with my brother, that we're here with our family, and we are open to you all's insights and wisdom around other things that we can do and say that would enrich your lives, because at the end of the day, we all need encouragement. And so with that, Tommy, why don't you close us out?
Again, thank you for joining us for another installment of Diversity Conversations. We look forward to having you back again, because this was a rich conversation and we know it will continue. Thank you. Please be blessed. Take care of each other. See you next week.
Bye now.
Bye now.